Capricorn, take a breath and listen closely. This isn't just another message. This is a moment of truth. Right now, you're standing at a crossroads, not because something went wrong, but because you've outgrown where you are. There's a choice in front of you. One you've been postponing. One you hoped would resolve itself. But it won't. If you don't choose, life will choose for you. Some doors are closing quietly. Others are opening only if you're willing to step forward. Before we go deeper, type this in the comments to align with this energy. I choose what's true for me. Because what you decide next doesn't just change a situation, it changes everything. Now let's talk about why this moment matters. Alright, my friend, stay with me. Capricorn, I want you to imagine this for a moment. It is late. The world is quieter than usual. And for the first time all day, you are not rushing anywhere. This is where I am speaking to you from. Not from urgency, not from pressure, but from stillness. Because what you are standing in right now is not chaos. It only feels that way because something old has stopped working. You are at a hinge point in your life. The kind that does not announce itself loudly. No fireworks. No dramatic collapse. Just a subtle knowing in your chest that says, I cannot keep carrying this the same way. You have been strong for a long time. Stronger than most people ever realize. You learned early how to endure. How to keep going even when no one clapped. How to hold responsibility like it was part of your identity. And for a long time, that strength protected you. But now that same strength is asking to evolve. Because staying no longer feels like stability. It feels like weight. Staying looks like waking up tired before the day even begins. Staying looks like doing the right thing while quietly wondering when it will finally feel right for you. Staying looks like loyalty that costs you pieces of yourself. And you feel it. Even if you do not say it out loud. Leaving does not mean running. Leaving does not mean failure. Leaving simply means you are listening to a truth that has been patient with you for a very long time. This moment is not asking you to destroy your life. It is asking you to choose it. And I know that choice scares you. Because you like plans. You like structure. You like knowing where the ground is. But here is the quiet truth. You are not being asked to leap into the dark. You are being asked to stop, pretending that the light behind you is still enough. You have outgrown the version of life that required constant endurance. And that is not a weakness. That is maturity. There is a reason things feel heavier now. It is not because you are failing. It is because your soul refuses to keep carrying what no longer belongs to you. And the longer you wait, the louder that discomfort becomes. Not to punish you, but to guide you. This is not pressure. This is alignment trying to get your attention. You do not need to decide everything tonight. You do not need a 10-step plan. You do not need permission. You only need honesty. Ask yourself quietly without judgment. If nothing changed, how would this feel in a year? And then ask, what part of me is ready to breathe again? That answer, even if it is small, even if it is unfinished, is enough to begin. Because once you admit that staying is costing you more than leaving, something inside you shifts. You stop bracing. You stop arguing with yourself. You start listening differently. And that is when the path that has been waiting for you starts to reveal itself. Not all at once. Just enough for the next step to feel possible. Stay here with me. There is more clarity waiting for you, right where this honesty begins. Alright, stay right here with me. Capricorn, there was a time when waiting was wisdom. When slowing down protected you. When holding back meant you survived another storm without losing yourself. And you learned that lesson well. You learned how to pause, how to observe, how to choose caution over chaos. It kept you safe. It kept your world intact. But listen closely now. The energy around you has changed. And the same pause that once felt grounding now feels heavy. Not dramatic, not loud, just quietly draining. You might notice it in small ways. How your body exhales a little too deeply at the end of the day. How your patience feels thinner than it used to. How the things you told yourself were temporary have somehow become permanent. That is not weakness. That is your inner compass recalibrating. Delay used to mean protection. Now delay feels like you are living half a step behind your own life. You are not lazy. You are not stuck. You are not losing motivation. You are simply tired of holding yourself back for reasons that no longer make sense. And here is the part most people never say out loud. Stability can become a trap when it costs you growth. Safety can quietly turn into stagnation when it asks you to shrink your truth. You stayed because it was responsible, because it was logical, because it was familiar. But familiarity does not always mean alignment. Sometimes it just means you got really good at surviving something you were never meant to stay inside forever. If you are honest with yourself, there is a part of you that already knows this. The part that looks ahead and wonders, is this really all I am meant to maintain, or is there more I have not allowed myself to reach for? That question is not reckless. It is sacred. And it shows up only when you are ready to move differently. You have been waiting for certainty, for a clear signal, for something outside of you to say, now it is safe to go. But what if the signal is the quiet exhaustion you feel every time you choose comfort over truth? What if the sign is the way your heart feels heavier when you imagine staying exactly the same? This is not life pushing you. This is life inviting you. And invitations feel uncomfortable when you have outgrown the room you are in. You do not need to rush. You do not need to burn bridges. You do not need to explain yourself to anyone. You only need to stop mistaking delay for wisdom when your soul is asking for movement, because the cost of waiting now is higher than the risk of trying. And deep down you feel that shift. It is subtle, but it is persistent. A knowing that whispers, I cannot keep choosing stillness when my spirit is ready to walk. Let that awareness settle. Do not fight it. Do not label it. Just notice how your body responds when you imagine giving yourself permission to move forward without apology. There is a quiet relief there. And that relief is not the end of something. It is the beginning of you trusting yourself again. Stay with that feeling. Because from here the path does not demand urgency. It asks for honesty. And honesty always leads exactly where you need to go. Alright, I want you to stay close to this moment. Capricorn, there is something I need to say to you gently. Not to correct you. Not to push you. Just to be honest with you, the way only someone who truly sees you would be. You carry more than people realize. Not just responsibilities. Not just work. But emotional weight. Unspoken expectations. Silent agreements you never consciously signed, but somehow ended up honoring anyway. You have a habit of stepping in. Of filling gaps. Of becoming the steady one when everything around you feels uncertain. And for a long time, that made you strong, reliable, respected. But strength has a shadow when it is never questioned. Because somewhere along the way, you began carrying things that were never meant to stay on your shoulders. Not because you were forced, but because you felt responsible. You told yourself, it is easier if I handle this. It will fall apart if I do not. They need me to stay steady. And maybe, once upon a time, that was true. But listen to your body now. That tightness in your chest. That heaviness behind your eyes. That quiet irritation you cannot quite explain. Those are not complaints. They are signals. You are not tired because you are weak. You are tired because you have been strong for too many people for too long without asking who is holding you. Some of what you are carrying no longer creates growth. It only creates maintenance. You wake up. You do what needs to be done. You meet expectations. And at the end of the day, you ask yourself, why do I still feel empty? That emptiness is not ingratitude. It is misalignment. You stayed out of duty, out of habit, out of the belief that endurance equals virtue. But endurance without meaning slowly erodes the soul. There are obligations in your life right now that do not bring you closer to who you are becoming. They only keep you connected to who you used to be. And I know this is where guilt shows up. The guilt of saying no. The guilt of stepping back. The guilt of choosing yourself after years of choosing everyone else. But boundaries are not rejection. They are clarity. They are the moment you say, I will no longer abandon myself to keep the peace. And this is important, Capricorn. Setting a boundary does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop bleeding quietly for situations that no longer nourish you. You are allowed to ask, is this still mine to carry? You are allowed to decide, this does not belong to me anymore, and you do not owe anyone a dramatic explanation. Sometimes the most powerful boundary is a simple internal shift. A moment where you choose not to step in automatically, not to rescue, not to overextend, just to pause and feel what happens when you let the weight fall where it truly belongs. There is relief there, even if it scares you at first, because underneath the habit of carrying is a deeper truth. You want a life that feels meaningful, not just manageable. You want to wake up feeling aligned, not just responsible, and honoring that desire is not selfish. It is how you begin to live honestly. Stay with that awareness. Let it settle into your bones. Something begins to soften here. Something begins to loosen its grip, and in that quiet release, a new kind of strength starts to form. One that does not come from carrying everything, but from choosing what truly deserves your energy. Just breathe into that for a moment, because when you stop holding what is no longer yours, your hands finally become free for what is. All right, let me stay with you right here. Capricorn, there is a quiet fear that has been walking beside you lately. Not panic, not chaos, just a low, steady hum in the background of your thoughts. It shows up when things finally slow down, when the house is quiet, when the day is over, and there is no one left to perform for. That fear is not loud. It does not shout warnings. It simply asks questions you cannot ignore anymore. What if I choose wrong? What if I lose what I worked so hard to build? What if I step off this path and cannot find my way back? You are not afraid because you are unsure of yourself. You are afraid because you care deeply about what you have created. You value effort. You value time. You value the sacrifices you made to get here. And that makes this moment complicated, because the choice in front of you does not feel reckless. It feels honest. There is something new pulling at you, not loudly, not dramatically, just a persistent knowing, a different way of living, a decision you have never allowed yourself to fully consider, a path that does not come with guarantees or familiar markers of success. That uncertainty is unsettling for someone like you. You like solid ground. You like clear steps. You like knowing that if you work hard enough, the outcome will make sense. But this is not one of those moments. This is a moment that asks for trust instead of proof. And that is why it scares you. You remember what it felt like to try before, to give something your all, to believe, and to watch it not work out the way you hoped. That memory still lives in your body, not as pain, but as caution. So you tell yourself, maybe later, maybe when things feel safer, maybe when I am more certain. But notice what happens when you imagine staying exactly where you are. There is no excitement there, no expansion, just maintenance. You can survive here. You know how to survive. But truly living feels like something you keep postponing. And that is the truth you do not say out loud. Staying feels empty, not because your life is bad, but because it no longer reflects who you are becoming. You are not being asked to abandon everything. You are being asked to stop betraying yourself quietly. Fear is not the enemy here. Fear is simply the edge of growth. It appears when you are standing at the boundary between what you know and what you are ready to become. And here is something important. You do not need certainty to move forward. You need alignment. Alignment feels different than confidence. It feels calm, clear, grounded. Even when the outcome is unknown, you have already felt it. In small flashes, moments where your chest softened when you imagined choosing differently. That softness matters. It is your inner truth responding before your mind has time to argue. This choice is real, and yes, it may cost you comfort. It may cost you familiarity. But staying costs you connection to yourself. And that is a price you have been paying for a long time. You do not have to decide everything right now. You do not have to announce anything. You do not have to justify your instincts. You only need to stop pretending that you do not hear the call, because once you acknowledge it, even quietly, something shifts inside you. The fear does not disappear, but it changes shape, it becomes focus. It becomes intention, it becomes courage that moves slowly but deliberately. Stay with that feeling. There is a deeper honesty forming here. A steadier kind of strength, and from that place the path ahead begins to feel less like a risk and more like a return to who you have always been underneath the responsibility. Stay with me. Do not rush past this feeling. Capricorn, there is something important shifting inside you now. It may not look dramatic from the outside, but internally, it is profound. You have spent many years moving through life with a familiar weight. The sense that no matter how much effort you gave, something always pushed back. You tried. You adjusted. You did the right thing again and again. And still, it often felt like progress came slower for you than for everyone else. You watched others move ahead. You watched doors open for people who seemed less prepared. And quietly, without bitterness, you told yourself, I just have to work harder. That belief shaped you. It made you disciplined, resilient, reliable. But it also trained you to expect resistance, to assume that growth must always feel heavy, that success must always be earned through exhaustion, that ease was something meant for other people. That cycle is over now. Even if your mind has not fully caught up, your energy knows it. You are no longer in the chapter where everything has to be proven. You are no longer meant to push against invisible walls. You are no longer here to keep reliving the same lessons just to show how strong you are. But here is the part that matters. When a long cycle ends, the habit of it often stays behind. You may still hesitate before trying something new. You may still brace for disappointment, even when nothing has gone wrong. You may still downplay your progress, because you are used to being overlooked. That is not intuition. That is memory. And memory can lie when it belongs to a past version of your life. You are not behind anymore. You are not blocked anymore. You are not being tested the way you once were. But if you keep responding as if you are, you quietly lock yourself out of what is available now. This is the moment where the lesson changes. The lesson is no longer, how much can I endure? It is, how much will I allow? Allow recognition. Allow momentum. Allow yourself to believe that effort can finally meet reward. This requires a different kind of courage. Not the courage to survive, but the courage to receive. To step forward without armor. To try without assuming failure. To walk through a door without dragging old disappointments behind you. You have earned the right to trust your timing. And that trust begins when you stop treating new opportunities like old battles. Ask yourself something quietly. If I were not afraid of repeating the past, what would I say yes to right now? That question holds power. Because it separates who you were from who you are becoming. You do not need to erase your history. It shaped you for a reason. But you also do not need to live inside it anymore. The ground beneath you is different now. Stronger. More responsive. You will feel it when you take your next step. Not as a rush. Not as a push. But as a sense of support that was missing before. Let that awareness settle. Let it soften the old vigilance. You are allowed to move as someone who expects life to meet them halfway. And when you begin to move from that place, something opens quietly. Not with noise, but with steadiness. A feeling that you are finally walking forward, without having to fight the ground beneath your feet. Hold on to that. There is more unfolding from here. And it meets you best when you no longer bring yesterday's fear into today's choices. Stay with me here, right in this quiet space. Capricorn, there is a moment that happens right after you decide. Not the kind of decision you announce. Not the kind you explain to others, the private one. The one that lives inside your chest. It does not come with fireworks. It does not feel like certainty. It feels like relief. Almost immediately, something loosens. Your shoulders drop without you noticing. Your breath moves a little deeper. Your thoughts stop circling the same question. That is how you know the decision is real. When you choose, you stop bracing against your own life. For a long time, you have been moving as if everything required effort. As if progress meant tension. As if you had to push every door open yourself. But once you decide, the energy around you begins to respond differently. You are no longer leaking power through hesitation. You are no longer split between staying and leaving. You are no longer carrying the weight of what if. And because of that, things become clearer, not all at once, not in dramatic ways, but in subtle, practical moments. You notice opportunities that were always there but never felt meant for you before. You hear invitations differently. You sense timing instead of pressure. It is not that life suddenly becomes easy. It is that it stops resisting you. You are no longer fighting the current. You are finally moving with it. And here is something important. Choosing does not require you to have everything figured out. That idea kept you stuck longer than anything else. You believed you had to see the whole road before taking the first step. But life does not work that way. It reveals itself through movement. You do not need the full plan. You do not need proof. You do not need permission. You only need direction. And direction comes from honesty. Once you decide, you give yourself permission to be a beginner again. To learn as you go. To adjust. To make small mistakes without turning them into judgments. That is a kind of freedom you have not allowed yourself in a long time. You have been so focused on getting it right that you forgot how powerful it is to simply get moving. When you stop trying to be perfect, your natural wisdom shows up. Your instincts sharpen. Your timing improves. Your confidence grows quietly, without forcing it. And something else changes too. You no longer feel like you are holding everything together. You start receiving support without having to ask for it loudly. You notice people stepping in, instead of you always stepping up. That does not make you weak. It makes you aligned. Because when you choose what is true for you, life rearranges itself to meet that truth. Not dramatically, not overnight, but steadily, you begin to feel carried in ways you were not before. And that is unfamiliar for you. You are used to being the one who carries. So let yourself adjust. Let yourself move slower than your mind expects and faster than your fear allows. There is no rush here. The decision already did the hardest part. Everything else unfolds through consistency, through showing up, through trusting the direction you chose even on days when nothing obvious happens. That is how momentum is built, not through force, but through commitment to a path that feels true even when it is quiet. You do not need to prove this choice to anyone. You do not need to justify your pace. All you need to do is keep walking. And as you do, you will notice something subtle. The sense of struggle begins to fade. Not because life stops being complex, but because you are no longer fighting yourself. That is when progress becomes sustainable. That is when effort turns into purpose. And in that steadiness, a deeper confidence begins to form. One that does not rush ahead. One that does not look back. Just a calm, knowing that you are finally moving in the direction your life has been waiting for. Stay right here with me. There is something important unfolding now. Capricorn, you have spent so much of your life mastering the art of quiet competence. You learned how to do excellent work without needing attention. How to carry responsibility without complaint. How to let results speak while you stayed in the background. And for a long time, that humility protected you. It kept you grounded. It kept you focused. It kept you moving forward while others burned out chasing recognition. But listen carefully. What once kept you safe is now keeping you unseen. You have real skill, not surface-level talent, not something trendy or temporary. The kind of skill that comes from years of showing up, from refining your craft when no one was watching, from learning through experience instead of shortcuts. That kind of value cannot be copied. And yet, you hesitate to let it be visible, not because you doubt your ability, but because somewhere along the way, you learned that standing out could feel risky. Maybe you were overlooked before. Maybe recognition came late. Maybe being visible once cost you something. So you adapted. You stayed quiet. You kept improving. You told yourself that eventually, someone would notice. But the truth is, life does not reward what stays hidden forever. Not because it is cruel, but because visibility is part of how value circulates. You are not meant to dim yourself just because your light feels unfamiliar to others. And this moment you are in now is gently asking you to step forward. Not loudly, not arrogantly, just honestly, to let your work be seen, to let your voice take up space, to stop waiting for perfect timing before you allow yourself to be recognized. Perfection has never been the requirement. Presence is. When you stay silent out of fear of being judged, you unintentionally teach the world that your contribution is optional. But it is not. What you offer matters. Your perspective matters. Your steadiness matters. And there are people who need exactly what you bring. They cannot find you if you keep standing in the shadows. This is not about ego. It is about alignment. When you allow yourself to be seen, you give others permission to trust you, to choose you, to support you. You are not taking anything away from anyone by stepping into your visibility. You are fulfilling your role, and I know that feels vulnerable. Because being seen means being witnessed. It means no longer hiding behind effort alone. It means letting your value be acknowledged. That can feel scarier than failing, but there is a difference now. You are not the same person you were before. You are more grounded, more discerning, more aware of who you are and what you stand for. You can hold attention without losing yourself. You can receive praise without needing it to define you. You can let success come closer without bracing for it to disappear. Take a moment. Imagine what it would feel like to let your work speak openly. To introduce yourself without shrinking. To share what you know without apology. Notice the quiet confidence there. That is not ego. That is self-respect. You have earned the right to stand where you are. And when you do, something shifts not just for you, but for the people who cross your path. Your presence becomes an anchor. Your clarity becomes reassurance. Your steadiness becomes something others lean on. That is impact. And impact deserves to be visible. Let yourself step into that space slowly, naturally, without forcing anything. Just by being honest about what you bring. There is a calm strength in that honesty. And as you allow it, the world begins to respond in kind. Opportunities align, recognition arrives quietly. Support shows up without you asking, not because you demanded it, but because you finally allowed yourself to be seen where you already belonged. Stay with that feeling. There is a warmth there, a sense of right timing, and from this place, the path ahead does not require proving. It invites participation, a steady exchange between who you are and what the world is ready to meet through you. Stay with me. Let everything we have spoken about settle gently. Capricorn, this moment is quieter than you expected. No dramatic ending, no final test. Just a deep, steady calm. And that calm is important. Because the choice in front of you was never meant to feel reckless. It was never meant to demand that you burn your life down or abandon everything you worked so hard to build. That was never the invitation. This choice does not ask you to betray yourself. It asks you to stop betraying your truth. There is a difference. You are not being asked to leap without looking. You are being asked to look honestly at what still fits and what quietly does not. To notice what nourishes you and what only survives on your sense of obligation. You have spent much of your life proving that you can endure, that you can be reliable, that you can carry responsibility without complaint. No one is questioning that anymore. The question now is different. Can you allow yourself to live in alignment instead of constant effort? Can you choose what feels true even when it challenges old patterns? This decision does not take your strength away, it refines it. Because strength that comes from truth does not exhaust you, it steadies you. You do not have to abandon who you are. You are simply being asked to update the version of yourself that you keep living from. To release what no longer reflects your values. To loosen your grip on roles you have outgrown. To stop confusing sacrifice with meaning. And I know there is fear here. Fear of disappointing others. Fear of losing security. Fear of choosing wrong. But beneath that fear there is something else. A quiet trust. A knowing that you are capable of meeting whatever comes next, because you are no longer moving against yourself. This is what growth looks like at this stage of life. Not louder, not faster. Just more honest. When you choose from this place, you stop forcing outcomes. You stop chasing validation. You stop waiting for permission. You begin to build a life that feels sustainable. One where effort has purpose. Where rest is not earned through exhaustion. Where success does not cost you your peace. You are allowed to want more without proving that what you had was wrong. You are allowed to step forward without needing a perfect explanation. You are allowed to believe that life can meet you with support when you meet yourself with honesty. This choice does not change everything overnight, but it changes the direction, and direction is what shapes a life. Every step you take from here will be informed by this moment of clarity. Every boundary you hold, every opportunity you accept, every path you walk away from, they will all carry the imprint of a decision made with self-respect. That is how futures are built, not through grand gestures, but through quiet alignment repeated over time. So take a breath. You do not need to rush this. You have already done the hardest part. You listened, and that alone changes the road ahead more than you realize. As you move forward from here, let your choices be guided not by fear of loss, but by trust in your capacity to grow. Because the life you are stepping into is not asking you to be someone else. It is simply asking you to finally be yourself without apology. And that decision made today shapes everything that follows. Alright, stay with me for just a little longer. Capricorn, if you are still here, it means something inside you was listening. Not out of curiosity, out of recognition. Because this message was never about pressure. It was about permission. Permission to stop waiting for the perfect moment. Permission to trust the quiet knowing you have been carrying. Permission to choose yourself without burning everything behind you. If this resonated, I want you to do one small thing right now. Type this in the comments, softly, honestly, I trust myself. Not for anyone else to see, but so you can hear it come back to you. And if you feel that calm in your chest, that sense of steadiness instead of urgency, that is your sign. You are moving in the right direction. If you want to stay connected to this energy, to these late-night conversations where clarity arrives quietly, make sure you subscribe. This space is built for you. For the Capricorn who is done surviving and ready to live with intention. This journey does not end here. It unfolds, step by step, choice by choice. Another message is already forming. Another layer of clarity is on its way. Until then, walk gently with your decisions. Stand firmly in your truth. And remember, the moment you choose alignment, life begins to meet you halfway.